Mark? Mark? Where are you? Mark? Mark, what are you doing?
I knew he was drunk. I just didn't know by how much.
I want to make something perfectly clear. Ending the video last week where we did was not a decision made lightly. I assure you there was no man or woman alive today who wanted that video to continue more than I did. But the fact that it was already 52 minutes long and we were staring down the barrel of another 10 episodes, it sort of sealed the deal. So please accept these, insert total runtime here, as recompense, and let's begin. We're made aware of 3 situations in addition to Jogo versus Sukuna. The healing station where Principal Yaga and Urahime are, a search party with Panda and Kusakabe, who's trying to avoid direct contact out of fear, and of course, Toji and his boy named Megumi. You know, I want to open this with analysis, but I just have to say right off the bat, this Toji guy bodied more bunnies in 1 second than Hugh Hefner managed in a lifetime, and that's the truth. The fight is honestly spectacular. The speed, the detail. It is a feast for the eyes and my narrative-loving soul. My suspicions last week have now been confirmed, with Megumi affirming that Toji is effectively a fully realized version of what Maki could become. But the gap between Megumi and Toji is staggering. While we are critically aware of Megumi's fatigue following the encounter in Dagon's domain, this isn't a fight for victory so much as it is a fight for survival. Megumi is just trying to make it to the healing station in one piece. Also, by the way, the creative means by which Megumi attacks and avoids the attacks of Toji are incredible. The rabbits are by far my favorite new addition to this arsenal, with their utility aligned more so with defense and evasiveness. Some of the scenarios that these bunnies help him get out of are a real feast for the eyes. They give Megumi a real chance to keep fighting. However, there is a moment when a ball drops in Toji's mind, where his eyes meet Megumi's for the first time, and all of those ruthless superhuman instincts give way in order to acknowledge the son he never raised. And fittingly, maybe even beautifully, the discovery of his son's name carries with it the acknowledgement that his dying request had at the very least been honored. A posthumous sense of closure. Holy fucking shit, would this guy ever go the fuck away? I mean, on one hand, I'm thrilled Megumi is receiving such intense amounts of focus within this story, but on the other, I really wish that Haruta had succumbed to brain damage courtesy of blunt force NANAMI trauma, which, you know, I mean, he kinda did with his technique being the way it is several times, but there's something about this shit-eating grin that just makes me want to see him die over and over again. Meanwhile, Panda and Kusakabe are ambushed by I want to make this perfectly clear. This is special. People can like or dislike this series for their own reasons, and that's valid, but from an academic standpoint, this fight, the atmosphere it creates, and its terrifying subversions are not accidents. They are the result of staggering literary consideration and effort. This isn't just great battle shown in writing anymore. This is what standing on the shoulders of giants looks like. I've watched anime my entire life and covered it professionally for almost a decade, so trust me when I say this is special. To those like Panda and Kusakage, this is petrifying. To Jogo, it's an opportunity. But to Sukuna, this is a game. Nothing but twisted entertainment, playing with the lives of others. And this is what I mean by standing on the shoulders of giants. Over the decades, the villains of Shonen Jump's Rogues Gallery have become iconic, with the likes of Dragon Ball's Frieza holding for me a special significance because he was the character that taught me what the secret to a truly great villain within this genre is. Passive domination.
And the spark goes out. If I were you, I'd focus on saving myself instead. None of you have even the slightest chance of escape.
Of course, there are many routes to success, ranging from quiet and sympathetic to loud and ostentatious, but for me, I'm kind of old school. Sometimes I don't want a villain I can sympathize with. I don't want a counterforce that I can root for. What I've always adored is quiet, confident menace. Narratively, a fight is about asserting one's dominance over another. And in reality, you can look at any scene where conflict is the central force as the very same. It's about asserting dominance, winning for the side you represent, all in the service of conflict resolution. And what makes these moments powerful isn't found in how hard they punch or how much influence they have necessarily. Their power is communicated through their ability to dominate with a single phrase or movement. It's in their ability to overwhelm with a single glance, command undivided attention in the face of fiery death, to say nothing and let the silence speak for itself. That is true domination. The means by which Jogo meets his end here really took me off guard. In what had been up until then an unbroken clash between two destructive titans awash with fiery mayhem, it suddenly gives way to abrupt tranquility. Within a story that could very easily have taken the route of evil curses versus good humans, Akutami sees fit to take the road less traveled, opting instead to emphasize the complicated and messy gray areas of several characters, and the result is a profound sense of humanity. Kusakabe is a jujutsu sorcerer, and yet his choices are colored by deception and cowardice. The ghetto cultists have profoundly deep fissures within their own communities, both sides willing to put their lives on the line in order to either restore or preserve the will of their now resting idol. But Jogo, due to his proximity to Sukuna, receives pride of place. We are never truly allowed to forget that Jogo is a villainous entity, of course, but just like everyone else in this story, he had dreams. A vision, a hope that one day curses could have real standing in this world. He dreamt of freedom. And when Sukuna acknowledges his strength and merit, what reveals itself isn't spite or contempt or anger. In a moment of true character revelation, Jogo weeps. Importantly, not out of fear, but due to the convergence of meaning and despair. Through this battle, he found vindicating recognition of his individual merit moments before the death of his dream.
Hold the phone. Did I just hear that correctly? Your anime voting muscles are atrophying and you haven't heard that Crunchyroll's anime award season is in full swing? Well, have I got good news for you. Because between now and April 14th, your favorites are counting on you. Anime of the year. We've got Dandadan dropping those danded dope-ass paranormal insanities, and Frieren, who doesn't just slay demons, she straight up slays. But maybe you were hungry for adventure and Delicious in Dungeon fills you right up. These are just a few of what's up to win this year, but who's taking home the crown? Well, that is up to you! Film of the year. Look Back got me looking back at myself in the mirror with tears streaming down my face, because boy, this thing knows me inside out. Why must things be so hard? But then there's Colors Within, and if it's anything like A Silent Voice was, we're looking at emotional devastation on a scale we haven't seen since Your Name broke me, my soul, and pretty much every bone in my body. But hey, maybe bone breaking is what makes awards, right? It's what wins them. Deku in My Hero Academia sure seems to think that's the case. Whatever you choose though, the power is with you. The link is in the description. Click it, vote it, repeat daily. Whether you're on your laptop, your phone, or some kind of futuristic anime voting device that looks like a phone, it works everywhere. The clock is ticking, the hype is real, and when that dust settles, will your faves rise to the top? Only one way to find out, and that's by voting right now, again and again and again. And hey, when you're done, you get a Fancy Pants Awards ballot to flex your decisions. Show it off, print it off, frame it. I don't care. Maybe you can no, don't tattoo it. That's a bad one. Don't do that. Vote now!
With this treasure, I summon. I'll be dying first.
You know, of all the fights that have graced our screens over the last 2 seasons, this is the episode that truly brought into focus how unique and talented Megumi is, and through doing so, might have offered me the necessary information that I've needed to answer some of the lingering questions this story has posed. Why is Sukuna obsessed with Megumi? Why did he make that pact with Yuji under those limiting conditions? During Sukuna's battle with Jogo, he used a technique that took the form of a fire arrow. But what was interesting about this wasn't this new technique necessarily, it was Jogo's reaction to it. He was completely caught off guard, thinking Sukuna's technique involved little more than cutting and slicing. Now at first I thought this fire move was a reflection perhaps, a mirroring of Jogo's own abilities, only whipping it out now due to the caliber of his opponent. But then Megumi summons the Maharaja, and aside from this being one of the most satisfying strategic plays this series has ever offered, Sukuna's reaction to this battle left me with more questions than I had answers again. As observed by Sukuna, the Maharaja's ability is to adapt to anything and everything it encounters, meaning that my theory as to the origin of Sukuna's fire ability cannot in fact be true, as he repeats its use against this formidable foe. So, if we are to assume, and yes, this is an assumption, that this isn't his ability, that this fire move doesn't in fact belong to him, where did it come from? Well, if this fight made any two things abundantly clear, it's that 1. Sukuna was ecstatic when he discovered the powers of this beast, and number 2, he went out of his way 3 times to protect the life of Megumi. Once at the start by helping him hang on using his cursed energy, the second time when he restricted the scope of his domain to 140 meters, and the third time when he brought him safely to Principal Yaga's healing station following the disaster. When Sukuna made that pact with Yuji all the way back in Season 1, at the time I thought it was curiosity. Maybe he wanted and was looking for a specific piece of information about Megumi's inherited technique or his past. But now it seems that he's learned everything he wanted to and still saved Megumi regardless, suggesting there's something more that he wants from him. Furthermore, after executing Jogo with that fire arrow, through using the word open, Sukuna obliterates the curse Megumi summoned in a storm of fire yet again. So here's my theory. What if this firepower that Sukuna's using isn't his? What if it's Yuji's and he just doesn't know it yet? Maybe Sukuna's ability isn't about mirroring others, but using the cursed techniques of the hosts he inhabits. We've seen that Junpei's hidden ability could be brought out with the likes of Mahito, so why not Sukuna with Yuji? And maybe, just maybe, Sukuna has no intention of staying inside Yuji at all. Maybe his sights are firmly placed on Megumi. Yep, okay, yeah, I know it's wild, it's speculation, but this story invites that kind of scrutiny because so much of it is built on unknown lineage, forgotten names, and ancient powers. I mean, we still don't know who Yuji's parents even are, and that alone could mean everything. Ultimately, time will tell, but first, we gotta pick up the pieces.
You little brat, be sure to savor this feeling forever.
This shot and its subsequent aftermath utterly floored me. And for the first time in this arc, I was moved to tears. And trust me, it's not going to be the last time. Walking through the deserted streets of Shibuya, Yuji is haunted by the supportive voices of his past. Echoes of advice, parting words, and affirmations that once found firmly positive footing now reverberate with the crushing timbre of despair. This emotional note is struck not due to the scale of the damage or the weight of responsibility he feels. It rings so thunderously because Yuji isn't just reacting to the carnage, he's reacting to a specific answer Sukuna has given him. An answer to this story's central dramatic question. In storytelling, themes are used to explore and define an answer to a given story's central dramatic question. For instance, Breaking Bad follows the endlessly nuanced rise and fall of Walter White, but its themes of corruptible morality attempts to answer the central question of that story. That being, what makes someone bad?
He's just gonna break bad?
His actions, his motives, or his conscious decision to be a bad person. Every story or arc has a central dramatic question. It is what informs the story fundamentally. In One Piece, that question is, can altruistic passion and effort overcome heartless tyranny? For Goku versus Frieza, that question was, what bends first, an unshakable determination or an unstoppable ego? And for Jujutsu Kaisen, it is simply, do the young have a right to define their own futures, even if they stand in the way of the old world order?
No one should be allowed to take youth away from young people.
In essence, the themes of a story are the tools used to find the answer to its question. It's standard practice to present your hero as the embodiment of virtue and design the antagonist with an antithetical philosophy. But what makes this scene in Jujutsu Kaisen so uniquely powerful and, in my opinion, genius, is that Akutami didn't just settle for these themes to play out in the story, he designed them to physically manifest and fight within his central protagonist, Yuji. His body is host to not only two differing souls, but two opposing sides of this argument, and whoever wins defines the answer to this story's central question. This is what Sukuna's answer looks like. He is the polar opposite to Yuji, the embodiment of despair and hopelessness, and it feels all the more powerful because this scene forces Yuji to reflect on his failures, the enormous decisions he's made, and the risks his friends took to save him. Would any of this have happened if he were simply left to die? The answer that Yuji figuratively and literally finds is no.
Itadori, you take it from here.
This scene utterly ruined me. From the beginning of this story, NANAMI has been a character fervently driven by cold, rational logic. His belief in the abilities of someone like Gojo presented him with sufficient reason to continue pushing forward. However, as we saw earlier in the arc, as soon as the news of Gojo's neutralization reached him, NANAMI became staunchly nihilistic, seemingly expressing that whatever effort they may exert moving forward would ultimately be futile. And while this perspective held truth, a flicker of hope always persisted. As NANAMI drifts in and out of consciousness through the tunnels of Shibuya's underground, the story of his inner struggle is painted all across his body. One half destroyed, mutilated, and ready to give up there and then, and the other undecided. Every time he closes his remaining eye, NANAMI is greeted by everything he desires. Every reason he could think of to just lay down and accept what he knows is ultimately going to happen regardless. Every reason except for one: responsibility. In his final moments, this sorcerer, mentor, and man, defined by his cold rationale and his willingness to accept nihilism, offered the single most thunderous rejection of despair in the face of certain death. And when the cards were down and when the pressure couldn't have been higher, gave Yuji everything his heart needed to heal. He gave him purpose through responsibility. Sukuna might have presented Yuji with the despair his decisions have wrought him, but NANAMI reminded him that it's important to do good, not only when it's easy, but specifically when it's hard. That is virtue. Yuji vs. Mahito is as fascinating as it is long anticipated. Having previously explored the nuance brought into focus during Jogo's execution at the hands of Sukuna, this fight leverages all of that narrative weight and holds it up like a mirror to Yuji himself. After hesitating once again to kill one of Mahito's contorted human weapons, Yuji's indecisiveness prolongs their suffering and endangers his own life, forcing him to ask Mahito, "How can you do this? How can you play with so many people's lives and keep doing it over and over again?" Mahito, dismissive yet pointed, responds, "You are me." Initially, this hit my ears like typical villain speech, but as the story unfolds, I came to realize that nothing could be further from reality. And it's here Akutami delivers some of the best battle shonen writing I think I've ever seen committed to the screen. When Mahito says, "You are me," he's illuminating a truth Yuji has been reluctant to face. Particularly at this point in the story, having just moments ago demonstrated an inability to contend with mutated humans, suddenly Mahito invites another dimension for his consideration. Just as Mahito sees humans as expendable, Yuji views curses purely as enemies to be eliminated. Both of them act without hesitation or regards for consequence. Yuji ruthlessly destroys curses, while Mahito does the very same to humans. Faced with that unsettling philosophical quandary, what restores Yuji's footing isn't a conclusion, but rather NANAMI's final words echoing in his mind. He must regain his composure and focus on the task at hand like he would. And while this is the most dangerous version of Yuji we've seen to date, the stage this conflict will be conducted upon carries with it a brilliant visual metaphor. Encased between a brick wall and a mass of twisted human form, Yuji is literally and philosophically stuck between a rock and a hard place, forced into decisive, dispassionate violence in order to survive. Initially, he avoids this confrontation and lands some truly incredible hits, but just as things are going his way, the narrow gap closes further, forcing a decision, and Yuji is not going to be defeated by these ideals. What emerges from this chaos is a changed Yuji, a dangerous, decisive sorcerer, a reflection of Mahito's own cruelty. However, it is here that we get a feeling for the rhythm of this battle, a sense that from the very beginning, Akutami had orchestrated its structure to test Yuji and force him to confront what Mahito said moments ago. "You are me." It's one thing to push forward, but it's another thing entirely to prove that you've learned something. And so now, having just overcome that frightening funhouse of contorted human despair, Mahito confronts Yuji with an attack on his deepest vulnerability: human life.
A kid?
Hey, better get over here!
Listen, there's no safe place in Shibuya right now, so get as far away.
This reveals that while Yuji has grown, Mahito remains more experienced, cunning, and accepting of their shared reality. And what's more is, it seems he has contingencies. Earlier in the night, it's revealed that Mahito strategically split into two, each fully capable of independent action. And worst of all, that separate version of Mahito roaming around the streets above encounters a familiar face. However, curiously, not all seems to be well within Mahito, as he expresses that he's running low on humans to manipulate, which told me that in addition to his personality splitting, perhaps their energy did too. Which means Nobara's decision to march unflinchingly into the darkness of Shibuya yet again, after everything she's seen, isn't just insanely brave, isn't just disobeying a direct order, it's the exact aggressive act that this story needs to take the fight to Mahito in ways that he was not prepared for. And more than that, Nobara is just so fucking cool. Okay, I had to get the fangirling out because Jesus Christ, I love this girl. Now, of course, I love it when a story dedicates some time and love to an otherwise sidelined character. But what I love about Jujutsu Kaisen is that this attention they deserve, when it does come, it oozes with personality, agency, and purpose. This isn't just a token moment Akutami's handing a supporting character, it demonstrates that they are their own person, and what's more, have consequence. When Nobara pins Mahito, asserting, "I've been thinking about it ever since I learned your technique. I bet this one will work nicely on you." It implies that in the background, she has had her own agency, her own thoughts and strategies for becoming stronger and more effective in the background. It's a subtle creative decision, but it is one that resonates throughout. I love this moment because this one impressive attack embodies the narrative's core theme, that even in the darkest times, hope persists because allies never abandon each other, because people still need them. Alone, this burden Yuji is forcing himself to carry might feel crushing, but that's what allies and friends are for. They pick you up, back you up, and never give up on you when the night is darkest. While Yuji's fighting effort was aided by Nobara's resonance attack, fittingly, what resonated with Yuji was the knowledge that somewhere out there, a friend took action to prove that he's never alone. An unwavering symbol of camaraderie echoing NANAMI's final act of resistance against despair, Mahito claimed that Nobara too is his natural enemy. In reality, heroic tenacity was.
Bye! Huh?
Yet, in a devastating twist of dramatic irony and frankly ingenious set-piece design, Akutami leads us through the twisting hallways of Shibuya and into the single most impressive narrative subversion I think I've ever experienced in my life. And the secret to it was staring us in the face the entire time. You are me. If Akutami is willing to grace Nobara's character with a sense of autonomy, strategy, and intelligence, then naturally, equally, he must follow suit with Mahito. I've never seen a more pure, perfect, and staggeringly powerful utilization of dramatic irony in my entire life. This moment, it shook me to my very core in a way I haven't felt since I was a child. My heart sank. As soon as Mahito's hand touched Nobara's head, my reviewer cap suddenly came flying off, and for a brief snapshot in time, I was transported back to my couch when I was a kid. Tears streaming down my face, I was filled with despair, sorrow, and anger, entirely enraptured by this astounding feat of narrative genius. I will never forget that moment for as long as I live. Furthermore, the flashback that follows it is not merely sentimental, it profoundly recontextualizes Nobara's entire ethos and emotional landscape. Nobara's friendship with Saori and Fumi, her struggle against oppressive small-town conformity, and her fervent desire for individuality all underscore a lifetime spent resisting limitations imposed by others. Nobara's pain, joy, and defiance have always been reactions against external pressures seeking to crush individuality and agency. However, it's this moment, framed within a stark white void surrounded by empty chairs soon to be filled by her closest friends, that I'm forced to acknowledge something uncomfortable. A fact that this very scene is starkly reminiscent of Jogo's final moments before his death. Just as Jogo found solace and meaning amongst his allies, Nobara too finds comfort and closure amongst those she loved. The striking parallel here between human and curse poignantly underscoring Mahito's earlier assertion to Yuji that they are alike far more than Yuji would ever admit. Nobara's final thoughts are disarmingly vulnerable, defined by regret, longing, and a profound sense of fulfillment. Her acknowledgement that the crazy ones tend to have the loudest voices, paired with her realization that genuine connection defies conformity, embodies her character's essence. A defiant individualism tempered by deep human connections, Nobara's whispered apology to Fumi for failing to keep their childhood promise, coupled with her final words, "Itadori, tell everyone for me, life wasn't so bad." It perfectly encapsulates her bittersweet acceptance of her own mortality. This marks the final narrative hurdle in Yuji's lesson, courtesy of Mahito. Faced with profound grief and insurmountable pressure, these are the circumstances that ultimately reveal if Yuji can finally confront and internalize Mahito's cruel truth, or if he will double down into a comforting delusion. But ultimately, Nobara's passing doesn't just signify personal loss, it embodies the narrative's exploration of empathy, cruelty, and the unsettling truth that humans and curses share far more than they differ. You are me. Okay, fuck, Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm gonna need a pacemaker after this. Blood staining Yuji's crumbling expression, we're thrust immediately into another flashback. But unlike the emotionally heavy exploration of Nobara's past, this one is a brief glimpse of the world Yuji is about to leave behind, maybe forever. Childish innocence. When Yuji resurfaces back into reality, he's forever changed, sinking further and further into a pit of abject despair, all the while Mahito masters fucking Black Flash, I guess, raising his standing higher and higher. And if that weren't bad enough, Mahito hits us with this quote. "I bet you thought you'd be doing some common pest control or defeating ghosts like in an old fairy tale." This speech, it's an almost meta dialogue from Akutami himself, as if the author is speaking directly through Mahito to all of us. I'll admit, when I first heard of Jujutsu Kaisen, I honestly anticipated a straightforward, enjoyable battle shonen with a ghoulish facade for the sake of marketing. What I didn't expect was a psychological and philosophical deconstruction of what constitutes right and wrong, yet here we are facing genuine moral complexity. This is war, not a simple story. There is no black and white. This is human versus curse, with both sides in full belief that they are the heroes of their respective stories. And what makes this scene so powerful is that in this moment, Yuji has just convinced himself that he cannot be the hero anymore.
What kind of woman is your type? Jennifer Lawrence.
That's it. I'm leaving my wife and finding me a man that loves me as much as Todo loves Yuji.
You're all gay.
This moment sent chills down my spine. The contrast between Todo's limitless conviction and Yuji's palpable apathy for his own well-being it's striking. It's a depressing sight for someone who was once so full of vigor and drive. Wait, okay. Hold up. Don't toy with my emotions like this. Does Todo's blonde, weird friend have healing ability? Holy shit! He said her pulse might be 0, but Nobara's chances of survival apparently aren't. So you're telling me there's a chance. Yuji just needs to get the fuck up!
I'm nothing more than a murderer! I can't.
At this point in the story, I was honestly convinced that Todo was going to die. I knew that by this point, his ability had well and truly been found out by Mahito, thanks to Yuji's inaction. I knew his technique works most effectively when fighting in tandem alongside someone he trusts, and briefly, it's even suggested that Todo is concealing something from Yuji. All signs were pointing to death in my mind. Nobara was done, Yuji was definitely done, and Todo's support had run off back to the healing station with Nobara in tow. All that remained was Todo. And this man of action, he didn't fight. He spoke a harsh truth, that as long as we continue to live, our friends who have passed away will not have truly been defeated. In other words, to give up is to solidify their sacrifices as nothing more than meaningless. To honor their memory, to truly carry on their will, you must pick up their fight where they left off. And what's great about this pep talk is that it's not even really a pep talk at all. It's a get your shit together, this is your fucking job talk. The answer Yuji needs is going to take time to find him, and it isn't going to come from anyone or anywhere other than himself. But until that answer does show up, as a jujutsu sorcerer, one does not have the luxury of finding comfort or motivation before picking themselves up again. Just like NANAMI and just like NOBARA, who ventured into the deadly night knowing full well that she may never return, this is a job that needs to be done. No half measures, because if they don't do it, no one will.
You take it from here.
That's it! Black fucking flash! Yes, King! That's what I'm talking about! Up top! Send that fucker to the shadow... Okay, that's wrong show. Anyway, here's a scene I thought we'd never get. A final meeting between Miwa and Mekamaru, and with it, an explanation as to why the Kyoto school was missing during such a pivotal time. Relenting to her insecurities, Miwa asks why she was not chosen like Todo was to fight in Tokyo. It's a question informed by every moment she's contributed to the story. This lingering feeling that all she was a weakling surrounded by the strong. But Mekamaru's response puts all that doubt, that curse that she's been carrying, to bed. It was never because she was weak, he was. Too weak to defeat Mahito, too weak to see what value he had in what he was, and too weak to share the burden with others. Others who cared deeply for him.
There was someone who I loved, and I didn't care what happened to the world, as long as I could be at her side and protect her.
In keeping with the message of this arc, despair and hopelessness are not qualities exclusive to any one side of this war. Through Mekamaru and Yuji's choices, either directly or indirectly, an argument could be made that none of this destruction would have ever happened had they chosen different paths. In Yuji's case, it's a burden he'll have to carry with him for the rest of his days, but for Mekamaru, that time is up. In the same way Yuji picked himself up to face the consequences of his failures, Mekamaru's final hours were spent honorably. And in his final moments, the woman he loved saw him for what he was. Not a monster, not a freak, but a beaten, yet kind soul trying to do the very best he could with what little he had to make amends for his sins. Just when I thought Akutami had shown me all that he's got to offer, this Mahito fight somehow manages to find fresh choreography, exciting fake-outs, and thrilling circumstances for my little mind to consider in the heat of battle. For instance, right? Okay, check this out. Mahito gives us a rudimentary rundown of his plan. With his power waning at roughly, 40%, and Yuji dwindling at around 10%, naturally, he concludes that Todo is the primary target. That's fine, and that makes sense. But giving me those kinds of details like that, that's a recipe for anxiety. It's going to make me scramble to try to figure out how that information could possibly apply to the conclusion of this fight. We already know that Todo's ability works by targeting cursed energy, so what if Yuji's energy meter reaches 0? He's already the closest to that point. That would mean Todo's boogie woogie technique wouldn't work on him then, which would then position Todo perfectly for a sacrificial moment, and honestly, my little heart just can't take that right now. Not after NANAMI, not after NOBARA, so please don't fucking die on me, man. And then Mahito brings the fight outside, limiting Todo's technique and confronting him with something even we haven't seen, soul multiplicity. And then it happens again, toying with my emotions, he plays with my heart. Standing face to face with two formidable enemies from Mahito, Todo kisses the chain around his neck, alluding again to the information he didn't share with Yuji, and then Akutami, the bastard, cuts away. Okay, breathe. One thing Akutami does, okay, scratch that. Another thing Akutami executes with ingenious simplicity is build fights not around opponents or dream matchups or anything superficial like that, but instead around restrictions. What makes Mahito such a compelling combatant with anyone he encounters isn't his compelling personality or his status as a special grade cursed spirit, it's how his technique forces others to behave. When in a fight with Mahito, the vast majority of the interactions become a lethal game of tag. Get touched, and boom, you're a walking tumor. Naturally, this restricts the scope of the fight considerably, which might sound bad, but it isn't. Because when a game has no rules, it's boring. and Akutami almost never initiates a fight without establishing the ground rules. We've all heard the classic Hitchcock explanation of what creates tension with the bomb under the table metaphor. If you place a bomb under the table without telling your audience, they will be shocked for a second when it goes off, but there's no tension and it dissipates quickly. However, if you tell the audience when the bomb will go off and show them where it is, suddenly tension abounds, and the same is true for fights in popular media. It's all about leveraging limitation to create anticipation. Gojo is theoretically. But what if you surround him with hundreds of innocent lives in a confined space? Suddenly, through restricting his ability, Akutami exposes his values and by association, his weaknesses. This gives him something to overcome, and that's what a fight is about. The very same practice is being applied here with Mahito versus Yuji and Todo. Mahito could, in theory, kill both Todo and Yuji using his domain expansion technique, but the presence of Sukuna within Yuji restricts its application. And so, just like when Gojo found ways to fight out of that trap they set for him, the question here isn't if Mahito's domain will come into play, it's a matter of when and how that bomb eventually goes off. And unfortunately for Yuji and Todo, Mahito is willing to risk it all with the very same approach Gojo took.
Domain expansion. Self-embodiment of perfection!
Alright, this is ballin'. Okay, Mahito tells Sukuna to shut up and watch from the bench like the loser he is while he kills Yuji. I gotta say, even though he killed NANAMI, NOBARA, and I want him to die in impossibly brutal ways because of that, when I saw this, I had to give the kid props. I mean, come on, give him his flowers. That shit was funny. I mean, no, it's not. What the actual fuck? His technique is just gone now. No, please just don't do this. He's fucked. He's screwed. He tanks another black flash to the gut, of course, because the dude's an animal, but he's also down his fucking hand! This whole sequence, I swear, took several years off of my life, but I dare say it was worth it. In a staggering moment of profound thematic resonance when trapped in the bowels of hell itself, staring down the face of death incarnate, Todo refuses to give in. Followed by a payoff to all the restrictions Akutami has set for him. Having tried to avoid his touch and unable to clap with one hand, Todo makes one of the most impressively satisfying and utterly ingenious split-second decisions I think I've ever seen. Just because things seem impossible doesn't mean they always are. As long as you keep picking yourself up, keep marching forward, and find the spirit to fight in the face of despair, there's always a chance. Now, I'm not gonna lie, having convinced myself that Todo was done for about 4 separate times during this fight, for this thunderously uplifting message to be his saving grace, pulled a few rare happy tears from my eyes. But the fight, it's still not over. This is some Dragon Ball levels of combat length we're approaching here. And I'm not complaining, this is hype as fuck. However, with Todo now out of commission, Yuji once again finds that only he remains to confront Mahito, who thanks to him has finally achieved his true form. And it is deadly. This battle, honestly, has been one of the single most emotionally exhausting efforts I've ever had to sit through. In these closing moments, Yuji's superhuman strength falters for the very first time. His body trembles, drained and battered, while Mahito's monstrous form cracks, breaks, and reveals exhaustion beneath. Both warriors stand stripped of pretense, raw and utterly exposed.
Hey, cursed spirit. The act of applause is an acclamation of the soul!
It was a fucking distraction! It was a distraction! Yes! Yes! Fuck yeah! Yeah, that's right. Fuck you. Run away like the prey you are. Mahito, finally having achieved his true form, in a cruel twist of fate, is forced to contend with the grim reality of his present circumstances. His cursed energy? Empty. His stockpile? Well and truly tapped out. His options, much like his future prospects, non-existent, and it feels good. All that remains is one final unfortunate fact for him to confront. While he managed to achieve his full potential through the fire of this vicious war, Yuji has managed to do the very same.
I'll accept it. I am you.
Unable to run, unable to hide, and unable to escape the consequences of his failures, all Mahito can do now is await the inevitable. In provoking Yuji Itadori, he didn't just seal his own fate, he unleashed a curse upon the very world he fought to create.
And then Geto shows up out of fucking nowhere. Who let this guy in?
Here she comes to wreck the day!
How? Please! No! No! Fuck! I was in the middle of concluding my cool fight-ending voiceover. How can this be? What? Fuck! This review will devolve quickly into even further screaming by me if I don't just check myself here and now. So I decided to take a step back and digest what this last episode offered me to contemplate, and the sudden absorption of Mahito by this entity masquerading as Geto isn't simply a shocking twist. It represents a specific despair that has never concerned itself with the battle of curses and humans, consumed instead by its desire to evolve. Mahito was a being defined entirely by his chaotic and rebellious spirit, but what was once free has now been rendered impotent, a mere tool with his agency entirely obliterated to make way for the single most chilling shift in perspective I think a story has ever presented me with. The convergence of characters like Kusakabe and Team Kyoto is not merely a convenient regrouping of allies, but a desperate final stand, a symbolic rally of hope that has come far too late to stave off the encroaching darkness. The arrival of Choso, burdened by confusion, guilt, and a crisis of identity, compounds the emotional weight of this climax. The shocking revelation that Choso's visions were no delusion was the exact point I had to step away and breathe, because I thought, how could this possibly be? How is this real? It's a moment that doesn't just reframe Yuji's vague past into an active element of the unfolding narrative, but it placed me into a position where I genuinely wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't. And I wish that I could say that what stuck with me was the incredibly brave battle between Choso and Yuji against this fraud. I wish I could continue on and express how happy I was that virtue prevailed, and in the end, the looming darkness of night was eventually overcome by the relentless hope for a brighter dawn, but I can't. Because what stuck with me was a speech that, in the span of a few minutes, reshaped my understanding of this entire story and every theory I had ever crafted to this point. A plan that's tendrils extend far beyond the reaches of this arc and long before this story ever began. A machination that fed on the hatred of the world until it was too little, too late. From the moment this story began, I was convinced Yuji was our main character because of his natural strength, an innate resilience and power that, once coupled with the wise words of his grandfather, placed this young, honest kid on the thrilling journey we followed. But he's not. Instead, these gifts were carefully selected for him, a measure taken specifically to facilitate the vessel Sukuna needed to re-emerge into this world. Through playing perfectly into his hand, Yuji has given this fake not only a strong vessel, but power beyond his natural potential was capable of retrieving on his own. Was all of that training, all of that struggle, and all of what NANAMI taught him about not giving up on a better tomorrow, was it all toxic? Pointless, facilitating nothing more than a maniac's vision for a new golden age of jujutsu?
Are you sure we don't need to go back to Jujutsu High?
It's not a problem. And besides, you're here with me too.
I've sat here and reflected on the implications of what I've just seen for about 12 hours now, and for one reason or another, my mind has been repeatedly drawn back to this moment between Suguru Geto and Satoru Gojo before their teenage years. If you cast your minds back to the OP for Hidden Infantry, you'll see that, apart from this being the best OP of the entire series, don't at me, it's less concerned with allusions to the events of the arc itself and more interested in authentically capturing a feeling that attempts to send us back to the warm blue sky summers of our youth, a feeling that symbolizes precisely what this arc is about, and broadly, what the Shibuya incident marks the end of: innocence. Suguru Geto wields many curses, but one he's consistently shown to rely on is this stunning and impressive rainbow dragon, leaning on its safety and its power when necessary. For Suguru Geto, this rainbow dragon, it symbolizes his friend, Satoru Gojo. You'll notice that whenever it features in the OP, so too does Gojo. He's designed with the same colors and even rides on its head during the OP's soaring crescendo. But in a case of cruel poetic tragedy, it's in the mission's crescendo where that very symbol is torn away from Geto forever. Upon his return, Gojo is unrecognizable. He kills Toji without effort, leaving Geto to the scraps. He retrieves Riko single-handedly while pointing out Suguru's lateness to the party. From his defeat, he managed to soar to heights unimaginable while Geto continues to sink, his dragon no longer there to support him when needed most. It's a tormented and profoundly dark period of his life, one where he feels like he's lost the will to go on and ultimately needs to choose what direction to take. This is where Yuji finds himself in this story. With Gojo gone, the burden he carries, the friends he's lost, and the life he's living, suddenly it all becomes too much to bear until a friend showed up to support him in his darkest moments. However, much like Geto, no one can make that choice for you, and this new version of Yuji feels ruthless, dispassionate, and at times uncomfortably inhumane to me. And it's unsettling not because he seems crazy, it's unsettling specifically because he doesn't. Maybe it's fitting in hindsight that Yuji's long and troubled path to purpose led him straight into Suguru Geto, a man whose final decision ultimately led to the imprisonment of both him and his friend within the cerebral plan of this twisted tormentor he finds himself standing before. In this video, I've explored and praised Akutami's decision to present this story's conflict, not as something childish or simple, but frustratingly and distressingly complicated. Doing so not by overloading us with cumbersome detail, but instead by holding up a mirror to his characters, his world, and in the end, even us too. It's a mirror through which we've been allowed to see our enemies not as we wish they were, but as they inconveniently are. Familiar, understandable, and far more human than we ever could have hoped to realize. The good guys lost here. Shibuya was leveled, countless lives extinguished, and in the aftermath, this fake's meticulously crafted plan hasn't merely upended society, it has annihilated the very foundations upon which it stood. By unleashing a terrifying new death game, sorcerers across the country have been forcefully awakened and thrust into a nightmarish scenario for survival. And the balance of Jujutsu society, previously held delicately intact, now lies shattered beyond recognition. Gojo, the pinnacle of strength and the symbolic guardian of stability, is sentenced to indefinite exile within his seal. Principal Yaga, the mentor of Gojo, has been sentenced to death, and Yuji himself has also been branded a criminal, ruthlessly pursued right this very moment by Yuta Okotsu for a horrifying act he couldn't possibly have committed, right? And yet, ironically, or perhaps fittingly, after reflecting upon this story's history and the shocking consequences of this very arc, I find myself unable to discern between two paths this story could take. After accepting and embracing that Mahito was right, will Yuji's story unravel to reveal peace and fulfillment? Or will we once again be forced to look back at this standoff, not with a smile of what was overcome, but with the understanding that Akutami had been holding a mirror between these two the entire time also? I guess all we can do is hope.
どこまでも続くようなあの季節は4つ並ぶ眼の前を遮るものは何もないアスファルト背にしぐれを反射して君という沈黙が聞こえなくなる